Hey everybody, it's been a while, but I've been super busy. But today I'm going to make the batter for Snickerdoodles. Now, Snickerdoodles are cookies that are basically a sugar cookie that has been rolled in cinnamon. And there's a lot of variations for Snickerdoodles out there, and there's a lot of um, ideas about what is the perfect Snickerdoodle or not. So, my personal opinion, the perfect Snickerdoodle is one that has a soft, chewy center and a crisp edge, and they're not really, really thick. They're, maybe a quarter of an inch or so thick. That makes, in my world, the perfect Snickerdoodle. You can find Snickerdoodles that are nice and thick, almost cakey. You can find them really super thin and crispy, but in my world, that's the perfect one. Now, when I first started making Snickerdoodles, I just used a regular recipe that I had found, and then I got my grandmother's recipes. Now, my grandmother is going to be 100 years old, so she was cooking for a very long time, and she has had all her recipes. She wrote on little index cards like this, and she stuffed them into these lovely recipe boxes, and she labeled them. So this one happens to be cookies, and she has one that says desserts, and she has one that says vegetables, and one that says main dishes, and one that says pies and cakes, and they're stuffed full of her handwritten recipes. And some of them she got from magazines and newspapers. Some of them have little notes on the side that say really good, or I tried this one. Some say mothers, which I'm assuming means it's her mother, which would be my great-grandmother. Some have other people's names on them because she got them from there. But they're all written nice and right with her handwriting, front and back, depending on how many she needed. Some are 3 or 4, and cards is how much she needed to make the recipe, and they're all paper clipped together. So I have been slowly but surely working through my grandmother's cookie recipes. I haven't even touched any of the other boxes. But I went looking for Snickerdoodle recipes, and she had three different Snickerdoodle recipes, and each one was a little different. And basically, I made each of those batches, and I compared how I thought they were, and I came up with my own version of the Snickerdoodle, and I used bits and pieces of all of hers. So one of her recipes used just butter, and those in my world came out too crispy because butter melts at a quicker temperature rate than other things. Some of them had just shortening, and in my world, shortening, they were too thick. They weren't with a little bit of a crisp to them. They were too thick. So I mixed them. So my Snickerdoodle recipe, I use half butter, and yes, totally real butter, and half shortening. And by doing that, I have managed to get the nice chewy center and still the crispy edges by mixing those two together. So we use a half cup of each, and we are going to blend them together because they need to all mix together well. And then we are going to add all of our other ingredients. So I beat the butter and shortening all together, and so you can barely tell which is which. And then we're going to add the sugar to this and mix it in there completely as well. So use white sugar because it's just simple sugar cookies. I don't want any brown sugar in there. I don't want any richness that brown sugar will add. I simply want pure white sugar. And so we are going to add that, and we're going to mix that all together as well. So I blended my sugar with my margarine and my butter and my shortening for like 2 to 3 minutes because I wanted to make sure that that sugar was totally incorporated. I didn't want any of those granules to be kind of hanging out there. And so the crispness that comes from these cookies isn't because some piece of sugar got a little bit harder than it should have been. So once we've blended our sugar and our butter and shortening, we're now going to add our eggs. And I've told you before that eggs need to be at room temperature. So I have 2 eggs here at room temperature, and I'm going to do just what I did last time, or many times, adding 1 egg at a time. And you want to make sure it's completely incorporated before you add your other egg. So you can even watch what's happening down there. See that? Now we'll add our other egg. And we're going to do the same thing. And it's all incorporated, and now we have it being a nice golden yellow color. And we will scrape down our sides because we want to make sure that those eggs get incorporated all well together. The eggs are going to help hold the cookie together, but it also helps whip up things and get it all some nice air to it too, which helps with the cookie as well. So just give it one more quick whip around once I scraped it in to make sure everything gets in there. Next, we're going to add our vanilla. So we're going to use a lot of vanilla because we want a nice strong vanilla flavor. So I use 2 tablespoons of vanilla. And then because I have what we call vanilla caviar, and it's basically just vanilla seeds, which add another whole aspect. And it also adds all these lovely little black dots into the cake batter, which are just kind of fun. And then I also own this vanilla powder, which I honestly don't remember why I have it. But again, it's nice, highly concentrated vanilla flavor. So because I have it, I'm going to throw some right in there so I can really bump up that vanilla flavor. And we're just simply going to mix that all in. And I'm going to show you where you can, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but all of those little black dots, those are vanilla bean seeds. You always know when you get true vanilla ice cream if you see some of those little black dots in there. That came directly from the vanilla bean. Okay, so once we have all this done, and we have that vanilla all, then we have our flour mixture. So of the recipes of my grandmother's, some recipes had just baking powder, and baking powder is made up of 2 things, baking soda and cream of tartar sauce. I was thinking of tartar sauce for fish, cream of tartar, and some had just cream of tartar, and some had just baking soda and baking powder. And so I went with some cream of tartar and some baking soda, okay? So cream of tartar is a leavening agent. It allows things to puff up a little. It also helps break down the sugars a little bit more so you don't get that granules of sugar in there. And baking soda actually helps with, once it interacts with the cream of tartar and some of the other egg and whatnot that's in the batter, it allows for some of that rising to happen as well. So I made all the different recipes, some with just baking powder, some with just cream of tartar, some with baking powder and baking soda, and I decided that I like this mixture the best because it gave just enough puff to my cookie without being too thick and cakey, and also not too thin. So I mixed my flour with cream of tartar and with baking soda and with some salt so that I could thicken up my sugar cookie batter. Okay, so it's all blended together, and if you could see, there's little black specks all through it, which I think are awesome. So when I was testing all of my Snickerdoodle recipes, I went through a lot of different choices of what to do. So some of the recipes said bake them immediately. So I did that with all the different variations, and usually I ended up with a flat, crispier cookie, and I didn't like that. So then some said refrigerate for like 3 hours. So I did that with every single recipe. And those came out a little bit better, but the flavor wasn't really strong. Like I really wanted to taste that vanilla. So finally, what I do is I make my lovely batter, I cover it, and I stick it in the fridge overnight. I want those flavors to really meld together before I bake and cook them. So that is what we're going to need to do. I'm going to cover these, I'm going to stick them in the fridge, and then tomorrow I will bake them and continue this video so you can see what happens once we bake them up. Now, fun fact, Snickerdoodles, nobody knows where they came from. There's a lot of different stories out there. Some say they came from England, some say they were invented in New England, which is where we live. Some say they happened way back in the 1800s. Some say they're a direct line of a German cookie. So the word Snickerdoodle is from Schnickennuddle, that's what it is, which is really hard to say, but most German words are. So one never knows. So my brother-in-law does not like the fact that they're called Snickerdoodles because he thinks there should be pieces of the Snicker candy bar in them. Well, the Snicker candy bar came way after Snickerdoodles were invented, and this candy bar was named after the inventor's dog whose name was Snickers. So it has nothing to do with the candy bar, but he doesn't care. He wants them to have the pieces of Snickers in them. So I did make them for him once where I actually cut up a bunch of Snickers and I put them in my batter and baked them up that way for him. But I don't recall if he remembers that or not. I remember doing it. So I'm going to cover this up, stick it in the fridge overnight, and I will finish these cookies tomorrow. And magically, you will be able to just watch the whole thing in one big swoop. To finish our Snickerdoodles, it has been an entire night. The Snickerdoodle batter has been chilling, and that vanilla flavor is getting nice and strong. My lovely scoop, but if you don't have a scoop, you can easily use a spoon. Since I have a scoop, I simply get my scoop, and then you want to make some cinnamon and sugar. So cinnamon and sugar is simply white sugar, and you put in some cinnamon and you mix it all together. So I use about a half a cup of sugar with a tablespoon of cinnamon because I like a lot of cinnamon. But if you are cinnamon friendly, go ahead and use less. So you roll it all around so it gets all nice and cinnamon covered. And you want to put it on a greased cookie sheet, or if you have the cookie sheet that I have that I absolutely love and nothing sticks to it, you obviously would be able to use that. Or parchment paper is a great thing to put in there, but if not, you just need to grease your sheet. So you have your cold dough in a ball shape, coated with cinnamon and sugar, and we're going to bake it at 350 degrees for, can I remember, about 8 to 10 minutes. You do not want to overbake Snickerdoodles. They are going to look like they are not done, and you need to pull them out because they'll finish cooking a little bit on the hot pan, but that's to make sure that the whole thing doesn't get too crispy because I do not like a crispy Snickerdoodle. I want the edges to be crispy and the center to be kind of chewy. So I'm going to put them in the oven for 8 minutes, and then I'll check, and then we'll keep looking until it gets to be perfect. So I will be back in about 8 to 9 minutes. So here we are. It took 9 minutes. Okay. And you can see if you touch it that it doesn't quite look done, but it is because you don't want this edge to get any crispier. And because it's not quite firmed up, you have to let it cool on the tray for a little bit before you can put them onto a rack to cool completely. And then, see when I touched it, how it just kind of stayed there? That's how you know it's done. You don't want it to collapse completely, and you don't want to have it so wet that nothing really happens. You want it to kind of collapse and stay there. And so while I'm here talking to you, this has been slowly cooling on the tray. And so we're going to put them, I need my spatula, because they're hot, so you don't want to just pick them up. So we're going to put them on the rack so they can cool all the way. So come right off like that. That's why I love this tray. They come right off. I don't have to worry about them one bit. You're not seeing a bit of what I'm putting on there. There we go. There they are. Yummy, yummy. So while these cool the rest of the way, I'm going to bake another tray, and then I'm going to eat one to make sure that it tastes and does exactly what I want it to do when I have my Snickerdoodles. Okay, so here goes nothing. We have a nice crispy edge and a nice soft center. Yep, I do make a good Snickerdoodle. I cannot lie. So, the perfect blend to make the perfect Snickerdoodle is butter and shortening, cream of tartar, and baking soda. Those are your critical points. Do not overbake, and refrigerate them overnight so that that flavor can really meld and get in there. Wish I could share. Not.